One of the country's leading forestry service providers says up to 2/3 of forest land on the east coast may need to be retired. It comes as torrential rain on Monday washed 1 million tonnes of forest debris onto roads, bridges and properties in Tolaga Bay, which the Gisborne Council estimates will cost up to $10 million to clean up. And while the Forestry Minister Shane Jones called on companies to step up today, at least one company says the answer may be pulling out of the coast altogether. Bridget Burke reports.
The Minister of Forestry, Shane Jones, firing a warning shot after heavy rain at the weekend left an estimated 1 million tonnes of forestry debris strewn over Tolaga Bay.
Those photos have certainly floored me, and the size of the deluge and the extent of the damage, I just don't think that the forest consultants, the Olsens of the world, can walk away from that.
Torrential rain on Monday washed the slash from forestry farms onto roads, bridges and properties, and the council estimates it'll cost at least $10 million to clean up. The Gisborne Council says just who will pay for the clean-up has yet to be worked out. But the Minister Shane Jones says the forestry companies need to front up.
I haven't heard a spokesman from Olsen's yet contribute, and that disappoints me because they're meant to be New Zealand's foremost forestry consultants group, so I'm going to ring them and find out why they're so conspicuously silent.
PF Olsen is New Zealand's leading forestry service provider. Here's its CEO, Peter Clark.
It's not a great look, is it? And whether it's ours or other forest owners, it's an industry issue. We acknowledge that. Solving it is not so simple.
He says the deluge of more than 200 millimetres of rain in less than 24 hours caused the land to slip and the soil to slip away, forcing the logs to sweep away everything in their path.
Solving that, I think long term, some of this land's just got to be retired, and probably retired from pasture use as well as from productive forest use.
Mr Jones says he's in no doubt forestry practices need to improve.
The truth of the matter is that if there had been permanent stands of trees along the waterways, permanent stands, not only riparian, left in the forest so that not everything is clear-felled, a lot of that debris I'm picking would not have made it to the waterways.
Peter Clark said he hadn't heard from Mr Jones today and said while new environmental standards dictated riparian planting, nothing could have prepared the area for the amount of rain on Monday.
And this sort of intensity of rainstorm, I really don't think what vegetation you had on that land, it would fail. This is some of the most erodible country in the world. It's crushed, sort of sedimentary, New Zealand's been tectonic plate up, erosion down several times. This is very weak rock and soils. And, back when it was native forest, before it was cleared for pasture, there are records of massive inundations of native logs down on Gisborne Poverty Bay Flats and on the beach. So the riparians, yes, they'll help to an extent in certain storms, but this was a biggie, and the whole land has given way, and I don't think it matters if you've got a riparian or not in that situation. It's going to go.
Mr Clark says retiring up to 2/3 of the forestry land would have a huge impact on the Tolaga Bay area.
At the extreme, you'd say red zone is a no-go area for production forestry. We know it's no good for pasture. We've already learned that. And so that's a massive area of the East Cape and East Coast. That has implications because the whole of the Gisborne East Coast area's economic base is land-based. It's farming and forestry. Now, if you take that away, what does the town live on?
Gisborne Council's Chief Executive Nadine Thatcher-Swan says logging companies are helping farmers clean up, but they're still trying to work out what to do with all the debris.
It's very difficult to burn, to stockpile and burn wood in the middle of winter, but they're looking at various options. The whole area is a floodplain, so we don't want to pile them and then we have the issue of them all being cleared out, but people have been discussing various ways of maybe bringing them out from the area. But look, we're talking, there looks to be like 1 million tonne up there of logs. So we're yet to just work through all the logistics around that.
Ms Thatcher-Swan says it could take up to 6 months to determine whether logging companies operating in the Tolaga Bay area have breached their resource consents. PF Olsen CEO Peter Clark says forestry owners have been meeting to discuss the clean-up and who pays.
Only one of our forest owners that we know about at this stage was a contributor to these floods and or to this debris coming down onto the Tolaga Bay area. And I've had a talk to that person, and yes, they're willing to assist in a small way. But they're also looking at their insurance policies, and whether that'll respond or not is unclear. You know, insurance companies are calling these kind of events acts of God, and you know, if the forest owner has done everything to best practice and not broken any of the rules, and you know, you'd have to say, well, as an act of God, it's up to the affected person, the landowner, to have their own insurance kick in those cases.
Mr Jones says Tolaga Bay was a major hazardous event and Cabinet will be briefed on the situation next week. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.